Hello and welcome back to the Karma Stories podcast. I'm Rob and I hope you are having a wonderful day today. Today I have two stories for you from the ProRevenge subreddit. The Karma Stories podcast is published to all major podcasting platforms, and you can also read along on YouTube under our @Karma Stories podcast handle. If you have a story you'd like to submit to the podcast, you can do so by email at karmastoriespod@gmail.com. If you enjoy true crime stories, make sure to check out our other podcast, Karma Crime, where we've just released our 7th episode. That is found also on every major podcasting platform. Alright, on to today's revenge stories. Let's jump right in. This story comes to us from Tay Cody. Manager targeted me because of my family priorities. It cost her her job. I have worked at a certain home improvement store for close to a decade now, about 8 years roughly. The first 7 was in North Carolina before I moved up further north to be with my best friend and her husband, who I learned was pregnant with my first godchild. As such, I transferred up to a store in the area and put my nose to the grindstone. I worked garden before and did that for some months before I started to be moved from department to department, as this store was low on staff. However, this was not full-time. My old HR had dropped the ball, and this store believed I wanted part-time. Having already moved, I grabbed a part-time overnight job at a gym to make ends meet, and continued to work all the while asking repeatedly for full-time at the main job, and never getting a definitive word back or a change. Several months into this, my goddaughter was born. As I lived with my friends during this time, and during the time of COVID, I spent quite a lot of time helping to raise her, and we became close. I would take time off that I was allotted to help look after her, and there was little problem. Half a year into this change, and I had made a good name for myself. I did not have a good deal of friends per se, but I was respected for my work ethic and willingness to help out anyone in any department that asked me. Enter a new assistant manager. The assistant manager was abrasive to staff and used to getting her way. The first I heard of her was when she outright fired a girl working the front desk because of a Playboy tag on a jacket. Myself and several other employees organized a walkout in protest of this and succeeded in getting the store manager to reverse the decision made by the assistant manager. This was not our first walkout, having done this in the past when another assistant manager, the current's predecessor, made sexist comments about a cashier. Soon after this, I was given full-time by the ops manager, working in receiving for a cantankerous supervisor. We often did not get along, especially as my godchild got older, and I took on babysitting duties while her parents worked and slept. It was not something I minded, as I adored the child. I often talked about her with my coworkers, and I loved to show pictures and stories. However, this was not something shared by my higher-ups. My supervisor was upset that I could not work overtime to help him, as we were the only two in receiving for the store because of either my second job or babysitting. And soon after the second walkout, I was made aware of a rumor circulating around the store that the child was in fact my own daughter, that I had fathered outside of my friend's husband's knowledge. The source of the rumor was unknown, but my assistant manager had made disparaging remarks to me in the past about men taking care of children. So I had my theories. My holiday plans, asked off in advance as soon as our electronic system allowed, were cancelled without explanation, both Thanksgiving and Christmas. I had never missed a major holiday since I moved north, and I had asked the same days off the year prior and had gotten them off before the assistant manager arrived. Strike one. And soon after this, my supervisor, whom I work closely with every day, had a positive COVID test, forcing me, per company rules, to self-isolate until I could get a positive or negative test myself. During this week, as it took a full week to find a place with enough room to give tests, I was harassed repeatedly by text and phone call by both management and my supervisor to track down an at-home test and get back to work ASAP. All the while, I had to inform everyone I was in contact with, including my friends, family, and roommates, that I had been exposed, risking their own holiday trips and plans. Strike two. Thankfully, my test was negative. A week after this, the Northeast gets slammed by a snow and ice storm, I drive a four-wheeled vehicle and so made it in, but near the end of my shift, I was made aware that my friend's husband had been injured and stranded in a car accident on the ice, and so left to get them home and their car to a service station. To add to it all, they have lost power in their home with an infant, leaving me with the only person they could turn to with a vehicle and power. I will admit, I had a few sick hours left, but informed work that I would be out on a family emergency. For that week, I called out each day with ongoing family emergency, with snow and ice coating the streets, and power still down throughout our city. And every day, I was hounded by calls from management demanding I return to work regardless. This would have not only risked my own safety, but would have stranded my family at my apartment, with no way to get supplies or get home once the power returned. Strike 3. I was done. Early in the morning that following Sunday, I walked into work and placed my resignation letter on HR's desk. That is important later. I had tendered it to be immediate as I live in an at-will state. Was it petty? Yes. I will freely admit that. I had given 8 years of my life to this company and asked very little in return. As I was leaving, I crossed paths with my supervisor, who asked angrily if I was finally coming back to work. I informed him of my decision to leave, ignoring his provocations, and left to go home and sleep. Several hours later, I received the gift that would ignite my semi-accidental revenge: a single text from my assistant store manager. "We will see how long you can take care of your love child without us." Well, seems I found my probable source. My friends had been made aware of this rumor from the start. I did not hide anything from them, and did not want any kind of rumor, however unlikely, to reach them from anyone but me. They are my closest friends and compatriots, and have given me the greatest gift in the form of my godchild, whom they insist I call my niece, as I am family. Lovechild feels like a slur against her, and I am not cool with that, and neither are they. However, they inform me of the monumental screw-up my, now former assistant store manager had made. It was time for corporate HR to be made aware, and so I began to compile my evidence. The texts from my supervisor, the call records and messages left, and this holy grail of a text message. If I was going to leave, I was, at the very least, going to give some blowback on the team that had been so willing to target me. What happened after is secondhand from friends I had still at the store, and so I cannot entirely verify all of it, but the assistant store manager played herself. The following day, a meeting of management and supervisors was convened, where the assistant store manager made it known that I had been fired, not self-terminated, for job abandonment and immorality. And unless I am grossly misinformed about the nature of American retail work, immorality is not a fireable event. To my supervisor's credit, he defended me to the assistant store manager and was fired on the spot. The store's HR rep, having earlier gotten my printed termination letter on his desk, made it known that I had indeed not been fired, but left on my own. And the assistant store manager attempted to fire him as well in front of the staff. And from there, it spiraled. According to my source, entire departments began to walk out or outright quit, having had their own problems with the assistant store manager. Appliances quit down to a man. Garden left with their manager to work at a competitor's, as he had been working on this well before my saga began. Front desk walked out in protest, as it came out that the assistant store manager had threatened and blackmailed several part-timers to not wear their headscarves if they wanted hours. Lumber, Receiving's main partner, quit. ProDesk joined the front desk protest as one of their number, a Sikh man, had also been threatened. Cashiers, both head cashiers quit, and the other trained cashiers walked out with the desks. Ops manager had informed the district manager and quit outright before he arrived, walking out with the HR rep and my old supervisor. My source's last report of the assistant store manager was seeing her sprinting to her car after having heard that the district staff was inbound, and the store manager was forced to shut the store down for the next 2 days, last I've heard. I've been in contact with the other injured parties, and we're compiling all the evidence we've collected, as several of the families are hiring lawyers. I suspect the company will attempt to keep this quiet, I just never suspected that anything like this would happen. I have a full-time position at the gym upcoming, and I've been enjoying the extra sleep and time I get with my family. I'm never working 56 to 64-hour weeks ever again. And I will never darken the doorstep of that store again. I hope my assistant store manager enjoyed the temporary rush of power. I suspect she won't be getting it ever again, at least not in manager positions. Jumping down to the comment section on this one, there's one from a user called Dacosaurus. It says, "Yeah, sounds like there's a class action hostile work environment case here. The whole store was willing to quit after directly suffering or witnessing harassment and threats for a variety of reasons, many of them being based on protected classes. It's even happened with previous managers. The company and enabling perpetrating employees are exposed to liability. OP and coworkers might seriously consider consulting a lawyer. Maybe another employee suffered even more damaging harassment. OP doesn't have to take the lead if they don't want that attention, but the employees should understand their legal right to potential compensation." Hey, OP, aren't you glad you got out of that place? Can we just point out the irony of the situation here where the assistant store manager was harping on OP for immorality when they were the ones hating on people with specific backgrounds in the store? OP, you said in your last paragraph that several of the families were hiring lawyers. I think you need to jump on that bandwagon and make sure that this place pays for what they've done. This story comes to us from Nub Muffin. "Manager bullies me for several months until I finally quit. I made sure to get him fired." This happened around 2016. I'd, at the time 25 or 26 male, been without a job for a while, looking for a better paying job than I had before, and I found one at a camera security company that was looking to hire someone for the service desk. I went for an interview and got a call back later that day. If I wanted the job, it was mine. Now, my new manager was an ex-military, specifically ex-army, not American, just pointing that out. He really didn't like having people disagree with or going against him, a thing I was very unaware of when I took the job. For 2 to 3 months, everything was going well. The manager was cordial and seemed to really enjoy having me there. I worked my butt off every day, as the software we were working with was unknown to me, so I studied a lot and even went overseas to another country to follow a course and succeeded on my exams. However, after that period, my grandpa, who was like a second father to me, suddenly was hospitalized after a brain bleed, maybe an aneurysm. He was found in the shower. He had collapsed after he pressed his panic button. Assisted living, not sure how it's called in English, apologies. This all happened on a Wednesday. The family came together in the hospital several times to show support and see Grandpa. However, on Friday afternoon, 3 p.m., I was called up by my father, my grandpa's son, while I was at work, and he explained to me that Grandpa unfortunately passed away. I was in tears on the phone and in utter shock. It took me a while to calm down. I went to my manager and explained what just happened, and that I'm going home to be with my family. However, that day there was an event. The company was doing a charity event, and this charity was going to be public news. They already announced the amount of people participating, and it would look bad if they were a person down. It was basically just for good PR. So he refused to let me go. I told him that by law, he cannot deny me, as my contract states I can take a day for a death in the family, and that I was leaving now. This was the turning point. He went from a nice manager to a manager from hell. Suddenly, everything I did was wrong. I was told he couldn't believe I was in this line of work for 6 years and be this bad at my job. He cussed me out and ridiculed me in front of my colleagues and even clients. This all continued for several months and severely began to impact my mental health. I had a talk with my parents and my fiance, at the time still my girlfriend. I had asked her to marry me in December 2016, and they basically told me that this was not okay, that I didn't have to take this, and that I should give them my 2 weeks notice. I agreed. The following day, I went to HR and explained why I was leaving the company, and that I couldn't stand the idea of working even a single day more with that excuse of a human being. HR showed interest in my well-being and, even more importantly, in what I was claiming about my manager. They had received more complaints about him, but nobody had proof of his wrongdoings. So they asked me if I had proof. I told them I'd be looking for a new job, but I'd gladly fit in the time to collect all I could. For the next 2 weeks, I collected everything: memos, emails, voice recordings. When on the phone, the calls are automatically recorded, and the dumb butt was stupid enough to cuss me out while I was on the phone. Lucky me. Also lucky was that my colleagues at the desk had my back this entire time. They'd been trying to cheer me up, said I was doing fine work, and that they also didn't understand this man's behavior. So when I came by and asked if they'd mind signing a document that everything I stated in the paperwork was true, they gladly did. I had one last talk with HR and him at the same time the last day I was there. Before he even walked in, I told the HR person who was mediating, he's gonna walk in, say what he wants to say, and I'll be quiet and listen. When he's done, I'll explain my side, and he's going to interrupt me, tell you I'm lying, and talk about completely non-related subject matter to drag the conversation in another direction. She looked surprised at my comment, but had no time to respond as Mr. Army Man walked in and began his spiel. Exactly as I stated, he'd blurt his side out, and once I tried to talk, he'd consistently interrupt me and tried to pick fights. Eventually, I got up, told HR, I told you so, here's the documents you've been asking for. I placed a filled folder with several dozens of emails, plenty of memos, and a USB containing 3 phone conversations, and even video footage of him yelling at me. In both voice and video recordings, you could easily hear him cuss me out. I gave the manager a big, bright smile, who was smirking victoriously, and said to him, I don't think you'll be smirking like that for long. Enjoy your little victory. His smirk disappeared into a confused scowl, but I slammed the door on him before he could respond, and left the building, feeling like a huge, and I mean humongous-sized, planet-sized amount of stress fell off my shoulders. Within a month, I was back to my old self. 2 months later, I was working at a new job, and out of curiosity, I checked my ex-manager's LinkedIn. Unemployed. I called one of my old colleagues to ask what exactly went down. My proof opened Pandora's box. He was being disrespectful to the female staff, insulted the older staff, and on multiple occasions was less than cordial with our external hires. None of these complaints were acted upon because it was his word against theirs, and there was no proof. However, me providing overwhelming proof of his gross behavior towards me made all the other complaints now to be taken as fact. He was promptly fired less than a month after I left, and they refused to provide him with any form of reference. In a field like his, references mean a lot, so not getting one from a company you worked at for nearly a year is a huge red flag. It's now 2020, 4 years passed, and according to LinkedIn, he's still not working in his field. I'll gladly admit that I felt rather wickedly satisfied, and still do, whenever I happen to think about it. Jumping down to the comment section on this one, we have one from a user called Jess1R. It says, even if it wasn't against the law and in your contract that you could take off work for the death of a family member, it is a pretty terrible move to not allow someone time off to grieve and prepare for a funeral. It's general respect. Just based off of that, without even considering the verbal abuse you and your colleagues faced from this manager, he got what he deserved. Another commenter down below called You Don't Know Who I Am said, so he had a pile of complaints against him, but they still did nothing? And even after you provided proof, it took a month to get rid of him? Thank all that you got out of there and away from that company. Sadly, in the corporate world, it's much easier to replace somebody at a lower level than it is to replace somebody in a management position. So when a complaint comes in, if there isn't proof, it really is a he said, she said situation, and that often doesn't lead anywhere. So as we've said many times on this channel, in fact over and over and over, document everything. Anything that just doesn't seem right. Any communications with your managers, your bosses, even your coworkers that you think needs to be written down, write it down. there should be documentation for anything you could use at a later time. If you enjoy daily Reddit stories, I encourage you to follow and give us a 5-star review on the podcasting platform of your choice. And if you're watching and listening on YouTube, please hit that subscribe button and drop a like on the video. It really helps us out. Make sure to check out Karma Crime, where we've just dropped our 7th episode. I thank you for watching and listening. I hope you have a wonderful day, and we'll see you tomorrow.